The New York Giants had a busy first day of the legal tampering period, best described as out with the old and in with the new. We take a deep dive into the moves they made and why these moves look so promising right now. That's coming your way next on the Locked On Giants podcast.
You are Locked On Giants, your daily New York Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode of the Locked On Giants podcast is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn today to get started. Hello, New York Giant fans, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Giants podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast family, your team every day. My name's Patricia Train, P-Train, credential member of the New York Giants media for Locked On, and of course for Giants Country over on the Fan Nation Network. And special welcome in to my everydayers, my Blue Crew community members, my newcomers, and everybody in between. Thank you, by the way, 9,000 subscribers over on the YouTube channel. If you haven't done so already, please like and subscribe to that channel. You are all appreciated and loved by yours truly. And if you're wondering why I'm waving my pad back and forth here, whew, what a hot day it was here. And I'm not talking about the weather in the New Jersey area. I'm talking about the New York Giants. They were on fire today with moves that they made, moves they didn't make. You can best summarize the moves as out with the old, in with the new. And we, of course, are going to break down everything you need to know about the moves that were made. There were quite a few. We're going to touch upon the main ones, really. We'll start off with, obviously, the moves that they weren't able to make. We'll talk about the moves they did make. And then, of course, we've got a huge trade that the Giants were able to pull off. So we're going to break all that down for you again. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Or if you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. We got a lot to cover, so let's get started. All right. First, we're going to start off with out with the old. And Saquon Barkley, running back, yeah, he did it, folks. He went and he agreed to terms with the Philadelphia Eagles. I know a lot of you are ticked off about that. I know Tiki Barber wasn't too happy about that. He basically said, Saquon, you're dead to us now. Okay, Tiki, I love you, but speak for yourself, come on. Xavier McKinney went over to the Green Bay Packers. Really, folks, these two moves were not unexpected. And, let's just talk about these real quick. So Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney, Joe Shane, the Giants general manager, set price points for what he was willing to spend on those positions. All right. Not on the players, but on the positions. If you notice, Shane doesn't really set a price point necessarily for a specific player. It's for the position the player plays and the value that it brings. So to go and pay Saquon Barkley in excess of over $10 million, that just wasn't going to happen. Now, I know last year that they offered him contracts worth over 10 million APY, but they were in a different spot last year. And, those of you who have, said that drafting Barkley number 2 overall was a mistake, for the same reason that was a mistake then, even though I understand why they did it, it would have been a mistake to re-sign Barkley for more than $10 million. And the reason for that is you don't put that kind of money into a running back unless you feel you're more than, that you're just one running back away from really going deep into the playoffs. The Giants have proven that they are not one running back away from going deep into the playoffs. They didn't have a winning record with Saquon Barkley on the roster. Not his fault. I get it. They have to have, obviously, the blocking in front of him. So it's not totally his fault. But that being said, it amounted to a luxury that they could not really afford to keep. So he goes to Philadelphia, who I think overpaid for Saquon Barkley. Personally, I mean, now I haven't seen the contract breakdown. I just know the core numbers, but 17 million, or what was it? I think it was like 15 million a year. It's kind of a lot. I think Barkley is now right behind Christian McCaffrey in APY. And again, I haven't seen how the contract breaks down, but just based on the APY, that's a lot for a running back. I was kind of surprised that the Eagles invested in that, that kind of money in Saquon. Not that Saquon isn't a good player, but he's 27 years old. He had another injury on top of it. And like I said, just not worth the money. Not at all. So Saquon takes off. I know a lot of people are upset about it, but folks, I would say to you, look, do you root for the jersey or do you root for the player? If you're rooting for the jersey, you want to root for the team to get better. And if it loses a player, a popular player, look, it happens. Lawrence Taylor retired, Phil Simms retired, Mark Bavaro moved on, Eli Manning retired. Life went on, so there's always going to be Giants football. It's just, the guys that are on the roster, unfortunately, aren't going to last forever. Now, Xavier McKinney, let's talk about what he got. He got, I think it was close to 17 million per year. All you needed to know about Xavier McKinney and the Giants is that when they did not use the transition tag, which, by the way, I never really quite bought into that theory that they were going to use the transition tag, because when you use the transition tag, you're basically asking other teams to negotiate for you. And then if you don't match it, you lose out on a comp pick. So it didn't really make sense to me. But anyway, the fact that the Giants weren't willing to spend $13.8 million on the transition tag for McKinney kind of told you what their price point was. They didn't want to run the risk of, okay, if nothing worked out for him, there was no market, now we're stuck with him for $13.8 million. They weren't going to pay that much for a safety. So, Green Bay came along, blew everybody out of the water with their offer. And the Giants now stand to get a draft pick back. Again, it's early. It depends on what they do the rest of the way in free agency. But with losing Saquon, with losing McKinney, they stand to get comp picks next year, which I think factored into the equation of not putting a tag on either one of these guys. Now, the other thing I'll just mention real quick, if you look at the moves that Shane did make, and we're going to go over the in with the new in the next segment. But if you look at it, basically what Shane did was he recalibrated the entire roster. Okay. Instead of investing big money in a running back and big money in a safety, let's pour the resources into the offensive line, which has been garbage for God knows how long. Let's pour the resources into the edge rushing group, which has not been very good for a while. So in that regard, folks, I don't think I can fault Shane for the strategy he's taken so far. Now, on paper, I get it. Everything looks great on paper. Got to see what they do on the field. But the theory behind it, assuming that I'm correct with what I'm saying, and I think I am here, it's not a bad theory. It's not a bad strategy. And, to all those who bought Xavier McKinney jerseys or Saquon Barkley jerseys, I feel for you. I mean, I don't know if there's a jersey exchange program, but look, this is what happens. Nobody lasts forever in the NFL. What do they call it? Not for long league or something, or not for long. So I don't necessarily hate the moves involved with Saquon, who reportedly didn't even get an offer from the Giants, because the Giants, I think, knew that somebody was going to come along and offer him more than $10 million a year. I don't hate the move that they lost Xavier McKinney, even though, you'll say, oh, well, he's 24 years old. He's homegrown. Why can't the Giants retain talent? You want to retain talent, but you don't want to overspend to do it, because if you do, guess what? Now you don't have money to spend on other positions of need. So I don't hate the fact that they lost these two guys. I wish them well. As I put out on Twitter, McKinney and Saquon were the utmost professional. They were pleasures to deal with. I wish them well. I'm going to miss them as people, but it's onward and upward. So that's where we kind of stand with the outgoing. Now, coming up next, I'm going to talk about the newcomers, the incoming players, the main ones. So don't go anywhere. We'll have that for you right after this. Hey, Giant fans, say goodbye to busted brackets because FanDuel lets you bet on every game of the tourney. Whether you're betting on a big upset or one seed, it's time to go dancing on America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets if their first $5 bet wins. That's $200 to use on point spreads, money lines, you name it. You can even pick who's going to win it all. Just visit fanduel.com/lockedon today and bet on college hoops until they cut down the nets. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina. We're breaking down a busy first day of free agency. Actually, it's not technically free agency. It doesn't start till March 13th, so we've got another couple of days, but this was the legal tampering period, and it's just evolved to where now by the time we get to the actual start of free agency, it's very anticlimactic because really all the action takes place in the first couple of days. But that being said, we're breaking down all the moves here on the Locked On Giants podcast. And coming up this week, I'm reaching out to my Locked On hosts so that they come on, tell us a little bit about the new acquisitions that the Giants are getting. So that is in the works. I know that was a very popular program we did last year, so we're going to do it again. I'm going to have a guest on. Hondo Carpenter is supposed to be on with me at some point this week. He, of course, covers the Raiders out in Las Vegas for Fan Nation. And he has promised that he's got some good scoops for us. So can't wait to hear what Hondo has to say. I love Hondo. He's great. And then at some point next week, I'm supposed to have an NFL draft analyst on. I'm not sure which one, but this is all stuff coming up here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So make sure you like and subscribe to the channel and ring that little bell for notifications so you never miss notifications of a new video. And speaking of which, some of you said that you haven't been getting the notifications. My understanding is YouTube, due to some kind of glitch, might have unsubscribed some people. So make sure you're subscribed. If you thought you were subscribed, just make sure you're still subscribed so you don't miss a new video. All right, let's talk about in with the new for the New York Giants. They went offensive line, which they needed to. They added a running back, which you knew was coming regardless of what happened with Saquon. And then, of course, they had, a couple guys that they re-signed of their own. Casey Kreider, the long snapper, Gunnar Olszewski, the punt returner. Those were two moves that I expected would be made. But let's talk about the newcomers, shall we? I'm going to start off with Devin Singletary, who is the new running back. Now, regardless of what would have happened with Saquon Barkley, you just knew that, they were going to add to the running back because, again, the Giants were going to a running back by committee approach. Another reason, by the way, they should not have sunk big money into Saquon, right? If you're going by a committee approach, you don't have to pay one guy like he's the premier guy. So they got Devin Singletary, who used to play for the Bills. Last year, he was with the Texans, was pretty productive. Singletary has never had a 1,000-yard season, but just, some of his stats, he's appeared in 78 games with 66 starts. Last 3 years, he's been pretty good as a receiver out of the backfield, over 800 rushing yards. He's only 26 years old and really hasn't had any major injuries to note. So is he on the same level as a Saquon Barkley? Probably not. But can he get the job done that what they need him to do as part of a committee? Absolutely. And they got him for a lot less than they probably, if you compare to, what Saquon is getting from the Philadelphia Eagles. So Devin Singletary, I know some of you are going to say, oh, another former Bill. Yeah, folks, that's going to happen, for a while until, all the Bill players that were there when Shane and Dable were there all go away, So Singletary, I don't hate the move because he was productive for the Texans. And remember, this offense, ideally, they want to gravitate to more of a deep downfield passing attack, which means that, the running game, yes, the running game will be a part of it, but will it be the featured part like it was when Barkley was here early in his career, especially? No, that will not be the case. So good value there on Devin Singletary. Okay, offensive line. This was a big one. We all know the Giants needed to address the offensive line, and they did so. They added John Runyan Jr., who is a guard from the Packers, and Jermaine Eluemunor, who I told you about. I've been talking about him on the show and also been writing about him on Giants Country, how he was going to be a guy that they were going to target. And now, of course, he is with the Giants. So let's talk about these two additions. Now we've got some competition here, some legitimate competition. So in John Runyan, and by the way, for you old timers, if you recognize that name, John Runyan's father, who later became a congressman for the state of New Jersey, used to play for the Eagles. He was an offensive lineman for the Eagles. And he and Michael Strahan used to do battles like you would not believe. It was great. Strahan used to beat Runyan's backside twice a year. There was rarely a game when Runyan got the better of Strahan. So those were some classic battles back in the day, for those of you who remember. But John Runyan Jr. is a guard. Okay, a very sturdy guard. I don't believe he's missed any games in his 4-year career. He has, let me see, he's a guy who could play left guard or right guard. All right. He's going to get one of the starting positions. Both guards are up for grabs here. Both guard spots on the Giants are up for grabs. All right. Whether Runyan goes to the right side or to the left side remains to be seen. What I think is going to happen initially is Runyan's going to get penciled in for the right guard spot. And the left guard spot, I think, is going to be up for grabs between Joshua Ezeudu and Marcus McKethan. All right. Now, those are two guys who have been, they're going on their 3rd year with the team. They've had some injury issues, some performance issues and whatnot. They're going to compete for that role, but there's going to be more widespread competition. You could see, like I said, Runyan could play some of those snaps in training camp. And Jermaine Eluemunor is also going to be in the mix. Now, Eluemunor has guard tackle flexibility. So you bring a guy like that in, and hi, Evan Neal. Well, say hello to your competition. Right? The Giants cannot, in my opinion, hand the starting right tackle job to Evan Neal. They just can't. All right. Evan Neal, 2 years in, has not proven anything. So to just say, here's the starting job, once you're healthy, if they do that, then I'm sorry, then something is really rotten in Denmark, as they say. So Eluemunor is going to come in. He's going to compete with Evan Neal. Now, it'll be interesting to see if Evan Neal can beat out Eluemunor. All right. Eluemunor, of course, was with Carmen Brasillo, the new offensive line coach out in Las Vegas. And this scenario is shaping up, almost reminds me of when Nate Solder came in and he battled with Matt Parrott for the right tackle spot. And Nate Solder beat out Matt Parrott for that job. All right. Matt Parrott was a 3rd-round pick at the time. Nate Solder was on the back end of his career and he was able to beat him out. He wasn't much better, once he got on the field, but he was better than what Matt Parrott was. So that's what I see happening. Now, if Eluemunor loses out to Evan Neal, now he can compete in the mix for that left guard spot. So if he loses out to that, now the Giants have a relatively low-cost swing tackle and a guy who could fill in at any of the guard spots. So they've got improved depth on that offensive line. They've got a guy that Carmen Brasillo is familiar with, and they've got a guy who really is not that bad, folks. I mean, yes, Eluemunor is, I think, 30 years old, wrong side of 30. But just, looking at his film, what little film that I've been able to see since he was announced as coming, guy is pretty good. So I think the Giants offensive line on paper looks a little bit better. Now, I know what you're thinking. We say that every year. We said that last year. We've got to see what happens on the field. So nothing's set in stone. Obviously, it all has to come together and mesh. But if you're looking at past history and what these guys have shown they're able to do, and I include Runyan in the mix here, it looks a lot better. So that being said, I'm optimistic about the direction of the offensive line. I don't think they're finished yet. I'd like to see them maybe bring back, Ben Bredesen, who can give them depth at guard and center. I don't know if they're going to bring back Tyree Phillips. I think it all depends on where he is with his rehab. My guess is now with the addition of Eluemunor, you've got Andrew Thomas, Eluemunor, who could play, either tackle spot, and Evan Neal. So you've got your 3 tackles. I don't know if they want to necessarily add a 4th one. Joshua Zudo can go out there and play tackle if they need him to. Not that it's his best position. So I question whether or not, they'll bring back Tyree Phillips. But on paper, folks, it looks like the offensive line's headed in the right direction, but it remains to be seen. We've got to see what happens. And I get that. So, we've been fooled too many times by this offensive line. We'll see soon enough. Spring football, OTAs in a couple months. I'll be there. I'll tell you what I see, and we'll go from there. All right, coming up next, I saved the best for last. Trader Joe was at it, and he got himself a big, big fish. I'll tell you about it right after this. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The question is, time for what? If time was unlimited, how would you use it? The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so that you can do more of it. And if you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and is designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And if you find your assigned therapist isn't a match, you can switch at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. All right, everybody, welcome back to the Locked On Giants podcast. I'm your host, Patricia Traina, and the Giants had a busy, busy day. And when they have a busy day, I have a busy day. So I really wanted to get this pod out to you a lot earlier than I am, but it's here, better late than never, and I hope you're enjoying it. And again, thank you for tuning in. You are appreciated. The Giants made a big splash today. No, it wasn't a free agent signing, but it was a huge trade. New York acquired Brian Burns, edge rusher from the Carolina Panthers, whom the Panthers had put the franchise tag on. And in a sign and trade type of deal, a tag and trade type of deal, the Giants were able to get Brian Burns. And the trade terms were pick number 39, which is the Giants' own second-round pick of this year. The two teams swapped 5th-round picks this year. So the Giants get pick 166 and they send to the Panthers pick number 141. And then the Giants owe the Panthers a 5th-round pick in 2025. Now, once the Giants acquired Brian Burns, he signed a 5-year contract for $150 million, $87.5 million guaranteed. So that comes to an APY of $30 million. That puts Brian Burns as currently at any rate as the second highest APY behind Nick Bosa of the 49ers, who's 27 years old. And it also puts him ahead of TJ Watt of Pittsburgh, who's 30 years old, in the mix. And again, that's subject to change as we go on with the edge rusher signing deals and whatnot. But Burns is 25 years old. I just love this acquisition, folks. I absolutely love it. He's got, he's got 46 sacks. All right. Roughly 7.5 sacks per year. And he's only played 3,831 snaps. Now, the compensation that the Giants had to give up, the same, just about, for what they got from Seattle when they traded Leonard Williams. All right. Now if that's not a cool, then I don't know what is. And let me explain why that is. Leonard Williams was 29, I think, at the time when the Giants traded him. He had over 7,000 snaps played, and the Giants were able to get a second and a fifth for Leonard Williams. Burns is 25 years old, 4 years younger than Leonard Williams was when he was traded, and he's only played in 3,831 snaps. And the Giants, all they had to give up was the same thing that they got from Leonard Williams. All right. You would think that, the Panthers, in signing the franchise tag, would say, okay, you know what? We think he's worth 2 first-round picks, which is what the compensation would be had Burns been signed by another team. And they didn't get a first-round pick out of it. Talk about a fleece job, right? So the Giants getting good value at a position that they desperately needed. And of course, the 5-year contract, I think, is the biggest or the longest contract that Joe Schoen has ever given to a free agent or an acquisition, an incoming acquisition that wasn't a draft pick. So that was worth noting. Now, why was this such a big trade? The edge rushers have not been powerhouses. I've been saying this for I don't know how long. I'll say it again. The teams with the best pass rushes have 2 or more solid contributors, guys that can get home, that create a pick your poison type of scenario for the opponent. The Giants haven't had that. They had hoped to have that with Kayvon Thibodeau and with Azeez Ojulari. Ojulari can't seem to stay on the field. So it's basically been the Kayvon Thibodeau show. And guess what? When you just have one pass rusher, you can double team that guy. Yes, they also had, Dexter Lawrence who could push the pocket, but I'm talking coming off the edge. All right. Giants just had one guy. And they just, they weren't going to go far with just one guy. So adding Brian Burns into that mix and saying, okay, you're going to be, teaming up with Kayvon Thibodeau and Azeez Ojulari. If you're healthy, you'll be our third guy. Now the Giants potentially have a 3-man deep edge rushing group, which can create that pick your poison type of deal. And if you remember, new defensive coordinator Shane Bowen doesn't really deploy all these exotic blitzes that we used to see with Wink Martindale. He kind of keeps it vanilla and that, it's get home with a 4-man rush. All right. So if you've got 2 interior guys and 2 edge rushers, that's what you want to try and win with so that you can devote as many guys as possible to coverage. So that's why this move was so important for the Giants to land an edge rusher. And the Giants got the guy that they wanted. Now, I went and I looked up some stats for Brian Burns. He had a 6.8 pass rush percentage, better than any Giants edge rusher last year. His win rate, his pass rush win rate per ESPN, who keeps that stat, was 21%. The 11th best mark out of all the pass rushers last year and better than any Giants pass rusher. All right. This guy, if he stays healthy, he's going to make a difference and a big difference for a defense who, quite honestly, only 19 of the teams, I think they had what did they have? 45, 49? Let me just see real quick. I think they had something like 45 sacks. Only 19 came from the edge rushers last year. Thibodeau with 11.5, and then Azeez Ojulari and Jihad Ward, the latter of whom's a unrestricted free agent, had the rest. You need better production there, folks. So in Brian Burns, it looks like they're going to get it. So what's next for the Giants? They still need to find a cornerback too. We're supposed to have met with Saran from formerly of Buffalo. I don't know what happened there. I know they also met with Williams, who had been cut by, I believe, Jacksonville. No word there, so we'll keep an eye on that situation as well. So cornerback 2 is certainly still on the docket. A backup quarterback is certainly still on the docket. Russell Wilson, by the way, for those who didn't hear, signed with Pittsburgh. So That's interesting. And, when the Giants get their backup quarterback, we'll talk a little bit more about that whole Russell Wilson saga, because I have some thoughts on that. But still a lot of work to be done for the Giants. And as I get the contracts in, I haven't seen, the full contract breakdowns, but once they come in, we will dissect them. I'll give you all that information, the cap stuff and all the good stuff that you want to know. And we'll just keep on bringing you the content here on the Locked On Giants podcast. So that being said, that's going to do it for us on today's podcast. Thank you so much for making us your first listen of the day. If you watch on YouTube, your first watch of the day. I'll be back with you tomorrow, Giant fans. Don't know what's going to pop up, but we'll have some good stuff, I'm sure, to talk about. And I can't wait to bring it to you. Have a good one, everybody.